video. We're here with Matthew. He got first place at the Phantom Rage Booster Box Tournament using Zombie Eldlich. And I'll let him explain.
First of all, I want to say big thanks to my buddies from back home, but especially my buddies here at Lionheart Games. They've been super welcoming to me, and this was an awesome tournament today. Everyone's being relatively safe. You know, we've got a pretty small store size, so it's been good to get out and do something that isn't play Yu-Gi-Oh online at home. So let's dive into it. I've got 3 Uni-Zombie Solitaire. That is run almost exclusively to tribute into your Uni-Zombie, or every once in a while to tribute to summon Glow Up Bloom. I figure running more Solitaires is generally the play just because you want to thin out your deck a little bit more. It's not something you want to be drawing kind of in the middle of the game. And an extra Uni-Zombie is not always that useful as well. So I'd rather kind of thin out those 2 slots. For a couple extra zombie extenders, I've got 1 Gozuki and 1 Mizuki. Oh, here, I'll turn these around so the camera can see them.
I wanted to just wait.
Solitaire, Uni-Zombie, Glow Up Bloom, and then we've got Gozuki and Mizuki.
There we go.
Gozuki is pretty clutch to kind of get stuff out of the hand sometimes, and every once in a while it functions as a good extender if you've maybe dumped an Ash Engrave and then they pop it, and then you can maybe grab a Uni-Zombie Solitaire out of the hand instead, and then you just keep going on. You go into your Needle Fiber, whatever your next play is. I'm running 2 copies of Necroworld Banshee. I run her at 2 just because she's... it's not the worst thing to see her in hand, but because of the Eldlich core, you can get her out pretty consistently. And if you do see her in hand, you still want to be able to summon her from deck and kind of pop a Rivalry Lock on somebody. For the actual sort of higher level zombie targets, so things that can be summoned off Bloom, I've got Vampire Fraulein. Fraulein is really good to search off the Bloom if that's all you have. If you don't have Zombie World up and you can't summon something, you put Fraulein in hand, it lets you stall out a couple extra turns. Same thing with Jackabolin, especially if you've got, like a couple extra hand traps or something funky dunked in the grave. And then it can turn your Eldlich revival cards or summon cards into kind of a 2-for-1. So you summon the Jackabolin in their main phase, and then you Jackabolin chain, grab something else out of the grave. So you get a lot of value out of it. Playing 1 Doom King, zombie players are pretty familiar with this. It's one of the strongest cards in the deck. It's your Outer Dragoon. It has a lot of interesting synergies with Eldlich. You summon it off Bloom, and you can, Eldlich effect, send something else, pop a card, banish something else. It's really, really excellent. And then we've got Double Lord. You can't really afford to run it at 3 just for how easy it is to get to it, especially. So, you can dump it off of Foolish Burial, you can dump it off of a couple extra deck cards, you can dump it off of Uni-Zombie, Gozuki. Everything gets you to your Lord. And you even have ways that if you need to get him back out of the banish, off an Ice Dragon's Prison, or God forbid a Called by the Grave. And then for the hand trap lineup, I am running Triple Ash and then a Gamma package. So Gamma is really interesting because if you open with a Uni-Zombie Solitaire, tribute it off, you've got an empty field, so they hit you with, let's say, an Ash Blossom, right? Then you chain Gamma and you go into one of the 8s that you have in your extra deck, or you can go straight into a Halka Fibrax. And then Ash Blossom is really useful just to have a zombie that is also a tuner that you get in graveyard pretty easily. And I think I'm still not super familiar with my locals meta, right? So in a vacuum, that's a pretty good thing to have. Gamma also notably works really well with a lot of the Eldlich stuff. So if somebody tries to Ash you or do something funky there and you don't have any cards on it, because you're working with all traps, and you get the Gamma out, especially on your turn, that can be huge. For the spells, I've got double Zombie World, and kind of for the same reason that I'm running 2 Banshee, because you always want to be able to trigger it whenever. 3 didn't come up today. People didn't prioritize popping the Zombie World as much as I think they could have or should have. If I see myself running out of Zombie Worlds, I'll get rid of them, but as is, the Eldlich engine is just like a little bit stronger to get you into your plays like that. And to go along with that Zombie World, we've got 2 copies of Super Poly. There are a couple of great super polys, especially for zombies, and then when Blazing Vortex comes out, we'll even have an Eldlich specific super poly target, get rid of some opponent zombies. It's just so good, and it can get you out of some some weird sort of tight game states that you wouldn't otherwise be able to clear. For instance, you get rid of a Dragoon, you get rid of, if I owned a copy of Mud Dragon, I lost it, there would be some good things that I could get rid of as well. Then we'll follow that up with the Eldlich lineup. So we've got triple Cursed Eldland, double Black Awakening, and one white. So that's it for the spells. The white sometimes comes up and you want something bad to send every once in a while in order to recycle it. Black is really nice because just with a Uni-Zombie and an extra card in hand, you can turn on your black and go into something stronger in normal Eldlich builds. I say normal, like Synchro and Dogmatica, they're not really running this because it doesn't help you all that much to get your Eldlich out early. But for me, this means, getting a Doom King or getting a Solitaire or something, to extend. And then Eldland, you just kind of have to run 3 of it, I'd rather see it at 2 than at 0. And then for the sort of power 1-0s, right, we've got 1 Monster Reborn, 1 Foolish, 1 Harpies, and 1 Twin Twisters. I don't think I ever saw Twin Twisters or Harpies, Foolish and Reborn in spades, weirdly enough. But you just need to be kind of ready. If your Eldlich engine doesn't turn on, you need that contingency for, popping something like a Macrocosmos, or There Can Be Only One, or something like that, then lets you pop stuff with your Eldlich engine after that. Scoop that stuff up. And then for the traps, triple Scarlet Sanguine, it's far and away the best one. And then I've got double Golden Land Conquistador, double Hawkero, a triple Rivalry, and 1 Imperm. 1 Imperm, just because I felt like it, and it's nice to have something that kind of works going first and second. Sanguine, self-explanatory. Conquistador is usually the one you want, and I've debated running it at 3, but it just... when you're dealing with, so in a pure build, you might want a few more pops to deal with, weird monsters or stuff like that. But when you have Doom King, you don't have to worry about it quite as much because then you're dealing, with the extra banish. And similarly with Hawkero, there's not really a reason to run it at 3 because you're really just running them. Sometimes they provide utility. Usually they're just getting you back to your Sanguines, get your zombie monsters out. Rivalry is really interesting here because you can turn it on with a Sanguine into a Banshee. You get everything up and running, even when it looks like you might have bricked a little bit, right? So like a Lord and 2 set cards is all you really need. And again, Imperm because I felt like it. Into the extra deck, I'll slide this out of frame here. I've got 1 Relinquished Anima, 1 Link Karibo for the Link 1s. These are, if you ever draw your Bloom and you think, geez, well, I don't want to just sit on this, I don't want to wait for my opponent to pop it. So you can more proactively go into the Anima to maybe, some people are not placing their Dragoons very well. Even though it does target, maybe you got a Dark Ruler or something, then you could steal the Dragoon. You could do some cool stuff. For the Link Karibo, it's just really more of a stall card and kind of comes up in your combos with Hauka Fibrax. We've got 2 Vampire Sucker and 1 Avenged Savior. Sucker's really nice just for how often you're reviving stuff. You just keep it coming back. And same with Savior. Sometimes you need that 1 extra dump. And again, with Union Carrier, you just need to get to that 1 extra zombie card. Maybe it's a Banshee or a Bloom or a Lord that kind of pulls the whole thing together. I've got Hauka Fibrax in there for, kind of classic Hauka Fibrax combos. You summon out your Bloom, assuming you have Zombie World on the field. You link into a Link Karibo. You make a Sucker off that. I'm not going for the super lengthy ones because I would rather Synchro into shooting Riser Dragon off its effect in the next turn. So that gives me some leniency with how I time my Doom King. It gives me an extra Banshee to keep Zombie World on field next turn. If I think I'm pretty safe, I send a Mizuki so I can push for game. You can really do a lot of cool stuff. Even the other day, I sent my Driver, so I didn't draw it. which did come up very briefly. I've got Nightmares, Unicorn, and Phoenix. Pretty self-explanatory. Sometimes you need them for the discard. Sometimes it's just nice to clear off extra stuff. Sometimes it's good for generic link material. And then I've got one Boral Sword. It came up last weekend, not this weekend, but I'm glad I have it just to sort of consolidate resources. Sometimes you're stuck with a bunch of, like kind of junky link 1s and 2s and synchros and things that don't really advance your game state that much. So you might as well consolidate. And then Boral Sword is also really clutch because if you have a Doom King on field alongside it, one of the biggest issues of Doom King is somebody trying to chain block it. But Boral Sword's effect to target and change the position can't be responded to, so you can guaranteed respond with your Doom King. And then I've got just a couple of, I say generic synchros, somewhat generic synchros. Omega is fantastic. You can recur a lot of really good stuff, on your opponent's standby phase, put a Banshee back, put a Mizuki back, and that's part of the reason that you don't need to run you don't need to run, 2s and 3s of those cards. Red Eye Zombie Necro Dragon was really clutch in one of my games just for getting me to an extra revive. I needed to push for damage. That's what it does. Puts another monster on board and you just keep swinging. And then my Super Poly targets are Starving Venom Fusion Dragon and Dragon Necro. I'm only running Super Poly at 2 in the main, and I'm only running those 2 targets because I think it just... If I was running 40 and if I was running a really tight list in a format where I thought that it would come up every time, I'd probably bump it up. But as is, it doesn't seem as impactful as it could be against a number of the top decks for me to justify running a bunch of Super Poly targets when I could have extra slots for removal. For the side deck, I have my extra copies of Super Poly, Zombie World, and Imperm. So there's some matchups where, especially going first, you really need to be able to stick your Zombie World. So for instance, if you're playing against Dragon Link or some kind of Noble Knight, warrior spam deck, you need those cards to not be warriors, not be maybe Thunder, right? So you want to have that extra Zombie World just in case. Imperm, if you're playing something that's weak to, the sort of targeted negation, or that there's some kind of weird floodgate or some kind of back row that you're going to want to turn off. Pancratops is just excellent, and then under Zombie World you can keep reviving it, you can bring it back, you can pop it. A lot of the Eldlich cards can do that on their own turn, and then you can chain your own Doom King off of there. Admittedly, it's something that's a lot stronger the stronger your game state is, but still in a vacuum, it's attack over something, pop something else, which can be really useful. I'm running triple Nibiru. I can afford, Eldlich has the tools to deal with the big token regardless. You can banish it, you can send it with Lord, you can pop it with Conquistador. There's a million different things you can do. You could even Super Poly after this. And it didn't come up today, but there are a couple of cheeky interactions where you Nibiru, and then you activate an Eldlich card, which then locks you into zombies. And then so you have to resolve your Nibiru as far as possible, right? So you just tribute the whole board and leave it empty. Which, when you're dealing with a bunch of back row and, maybe a Doom King engrave, that's a lot better than whatever your opponent's playing, generally. Going on here, we've got one of Triple Tactics. I resolved it once. I only own 1 copy. I'd probably run a few more if I could. I've got 2 Cosmic Cyclone. You just need the back row hate, and it's really slick against... as compared to a Twin Twisters, right? Like decks like Infernoble that they really want their equips to go to grave afterwards. So getting it out of the game entirely is really impactful. 2 Dark Ruler No More. I don't know that this was worth playing. I never had a situation, and I owe it to the man behind the camera for playing Trap Tricks, where I, wasn't so worried about a bunch of big monster effects. But theoretically, if I was running up against some of these big Dragon Link boards or a Dragoon or something like that, that would help me stick my normal summons, which I desperately need. One of Mystic Mine, which is massive because some decks just have 0 outs to it. So for instance, Dogmatica invoked has no native out to Mystic Mine, so they have to rely on drawing something like a Cosmic Cyclone, a Twin, a Harpy's Feather Duster. Which especially game 1, if they're not looking for it, they might not be running. And then I have 2 evenly matched just to kind of take care of some of the weird threats that zombies can't take care of on their own. There are very few we don't really have any big board wipe effects, and so if I have to deal with more than one of anything, it can be, you know, pretty bad. And then it's really slick if I say lose my normal summoning off something like you know, like a gamma or something like that going second, then I can just evenly matched clear out the board and at least set some of my Eldlich stuff and know that it's going to go off relatively uninterrupted. That's about it. I don't think there's anything that I haven't covered here. It was a really awesome day. Funny enough, the guy behind the camera, Todd, he got second, but then pulled way better cards than I did. So, you know, I'm a little bit conflicted, but it's my first time being on camera like this, so I really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Yep.